Hey guys! Today we're stepping into a story that begins with lace, champagne flutes, and 100 white roses and ends with a title no one ever thought I'd wear. I was the maid at their wedding. Not a bridesmaid, not a guest. The maid, hired help. I carried trays while they toasted. I scrubbed lipstick off crystal while they kissed under chandeliers. But, as you'll soon see, fate has a twisted sense of humor. And you probably won't survive this if you've ever been underestimated your whole life. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, tell me your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing how far this community reaches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It started on a Saturday so hot, even the pool water felt like tea. I had been working at the estate for 3 months by then part-time, mostly evening shifts, hired through a service that specialized in invisible elegance, translation work like a ghost, look like a mannequin. The wedding had been on the books for months. Everyone in the staff quarters whispered about it like it was the coronation of the century. The bride, Fiona, was the daughter of a real estate heiress. The groom, Troy, was handsome in that prep school, combed hair, permanently tanned kind of way. They were young, rich, and dripping in entitlement. I'd been assigned to discreet beverage duty, which meant weaving through clusters of guests with a silver tray of champagne, smiling silently like I wasn't sweating through polyester and heartbreak. My mother had just passed away 2 weeks earlier. No one at the estate knew. No one asked. I first noticed Fiona's cruelty in small things, the way she clicked her fingers for napkins, the way she rolled her eyes when her bridesmaids asked for more lipstick, the way she snapped at me when I dared to walk behind her in photos. "You're in the shot, sweetheart." But the real humiliation came during the toast. Fiona stood tall in her designer gown, glass in hand, and said, loud enough for several tables to hear, "Here's to marrying up, because who wants to end up like the help?" Some people laughed. Others looked away. I froze, pretending not to hear, cheeks burning as I adjusted the tray on my palm. I kept working through the sting, refilled flutes, smiled at drunk uncles, cleared napkins with lipstick stains brighter than my future. And then I met him. He stood near the edge of the garden, slightly apart from the crowd, nursing a drink and scanning the guests like a man perpetually unimpressed. Gray suit, silver hair, and a stare that said, "I built this empire and I'm tired of everyone in it. I only approached to offer champagne." He looked at me, not past me, not through me, at me. "No, thank you," he said. And then, "How long have you worked here?" 3 months, I answered softly. He nodded. "You don't belong here." I blinked, confused. I, I mean, among the staff. He clarified, his voice low. "You hold that tray like a dancer, not a servant." I didn't know what to say. No one had ever spoken to me like that, like I had layers they couldn't see, like maybe I was more than the uniform and the name tag. Later, I found out his name was Raymond Hollowell, the father of the groom, and the owner of the estate. After the couple's slow-motion kiss under the sparklers, after the cake, after the fireworks, I found myself back in the kitchen polishing silverware that hadn't even been used. That's when Raymond reappeared. "Can I offer you something better than this?" he asked, gesturing toward the chaos. I didn't understand. Like another job, like a seat at the table. I laughed. Actually, I laughed. I thought he was mocking me. But his face didn't change. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a card, and handed it to me. "My assistant's number. Call her. Tell her I said it's time for a better story." Then he left, just like that, and I stood there, in my stained uniform and tired shoes, holding a business card that buzzed in my hand like it was alive. That was the night everything shifted. Not with fanfare, not with some movie-style music swell, but with a whisper, with possibility, with a man who looked through a room full of airs and saw me. I didn't call the number the next day, or the day after. I stared at it instead, propped against my toothbrush like a dare, folded into the corner of my journal, tucked in my wallet like a secret. Part of me thought it was a joke. Another part wondered if I dreamt the whole thing. Rich men don't notice girls like me, especially not the kind who polish their forks and mop their marble floors. But on the fourth day, after another shift full of barking clients and an oven fire I wasn't paid enough to handle, I called. The woman who answered Sophie spoke with clipped efficiency. "Mr. Hollowell told me you'd be calling," she said. "Can you be at the Fairview address tomorrow at 9 a.m.? I arrived early." The house was nothing like the estate. Smaller, but refined. Understated elegance. Like someone had stripped away the noise and left only taste. Raymond opened the door himself. He wore no tie, just a soft sweater and slacks. His eyes scanned me the way they had at the wedding measured, but not invasive. We talked over tea, real tea, loose leaves, no bags. He asked about my life, my schooling, my late mother. I answered carefully, unsure of what this was. A test, a game, but he listened, really listened, like I was a person worth knowing. When I asked him what this was all about, he smiled and said, "I'm offering you a different room." I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I said yes. He didn't offer me a job exactly, more like space, time. He called it a sabbatical from survival. I moved into the guest wing of the Fairview property, where I was told to rest, to read, to think. No cleaning, no chores, no expectations. For someone who'd spent her entire life working for scraps, it was terrifying. At first, I felt like I had to earn every breath I took under that roof. I tried to help in the kitchen, folded towels no one asked me to, rearranged bookshelves just to feel useful. Raymond caught me once, dusting the baseboards. He raised an eyebrow. "I invited you here to rest, not redecorate, but I can't just do nothing." "You're not doing nothing. You're becoming someone." That sentence sat with me for weeks. I started reading again, something I hadn't done since college. I wrote in my journal. I walked the gardens barefoot. Something about the earth grounding me after years of floating above pain I hadn't processed. And slowly, I began to feel present. Raymond and I had dinners together, long ones, no phones, no interruptions. Just conversation that stretched and meandered like a river with no rush to reach the sea. He told me about his late wife, about building his company from nothing, about his disappointment in Troy, his son, the groom I'd once served without a single thank you. He never badmouthed Fiona directly, but the sigh in his voice when her name came up said enough. "She likes being looked at," he said once, slicing into lamb. Not seen, there's a difference. Our bond deepened quietly. It wasn't flirtatious at first. It was intellectual, emotional. Two people finding echoes of themselves in someone they never expected. The first time he touched my hand across the table, I flinched, not because I didn't want it, but because I did, and that scared me more than anything. "Are you afraid of me?" he asked gently. "No," I said truthfully. "I'm afraid of what this might mean. Maybe it just means you're ready." The first kiss didn't happen until weeks later. Rain was thundering against the windows. I'd just beaten him at chess for the first time. He smiled. And something in that smile pulled the thread that unraveled every wall I'd built. He kissed me like I was made of answers. When he asked me to dinner in the city the following week, I said yes. When he introduced me to a friend as someone important, I smiled. When he said, "Let's make this official," I didn't run, but not everyone celebrated. The first time Fiona saw me again was at a gallery opening. I was in navy silk, hair swept up, standing beside Raymond as the cameras clicked. She froze mid-laugh when she saw us. Her smile faltered like a skipped heartbeat. "Is that?" I heard her hiss. Raymond leaned toward me. "Showtime." She approached, champagne in hand, fake warmth oozing from every syllable. "Oh my God. You look different." I smiled. Life tends to do that when you're not fetching hors d'oeuvres. She blinked, faltered. Then, "So are you two." Raymond answered before I could. "She's the best thing that's happened to me in years." Fiona's jaw tensed. "Well, isn't this poetic?" I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Because the shift had already happened. I was no longer beneath her. I was beside him. The engagement wasn't a grand affair. No choreographed flash mob, no drone shot proposal at a clifftop estate. It was a quiet morning in late spring, just me and Raymond on the veranda, sipping dark roast and watching the fog lift from the hedgerows. "I don't need a ceremony," he said, setting his cup down. "But I'd like to make this real. For you, for me, for the world that still thinks they know where people belong." I looked at him, this man who had opened not just his home but his heart to me, and nodded. No speech, no tears, just the truth. The announcement shook the inner circles like an unexpected earthquake. He's marrying who they asked. Wasn't she the maid at Troy's wedding? Yes, I was. And now, I was going to be his stepmother. Raymond didn't care about the whispers. He welcomed them. Even, "Let them talk," he said. "Their mouths keep moving because their lives don't." But Troy was another story. He called his father 3 days after the engagement announcement went public. The call was short, sharp, and ended with the word "mistake." Raymond didn't flinch. "He's still a boy," he told me after. "A boy who thinks money is the only thing that makes someone valuable." Fiona, however, was less subtle. She sent a message. A literal message via courier, handwritten on thick monogram stationery. "Congratulations. I suppose we should start calling you Mother now. See you at Thanksgiving." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The wedding was private. 10 guests, garden vows, a quartet playing Debussy. I wore a gown the color of dawn, and no veil. There was nothing I wanted to hide. When I looked at Raymond, I didn't see an older man. I saw the first person who'd ever offered me a future. Not just a favor. Afterward, he carried me over the threshold like it was a fairy tale we'd both earned the hard way. And so began my new role, not just as wife, but as stepmother. I'll never forget the first time we had them over, Troy and Fiona. Raymond insisted, "They need to see it. Not in tabloids, not through hearsay. Here, with us, in our home." They arrived in their usual curated glamour, Troy in linen and expensive cologne, Fiona dripping in gold that screamed louder than her voice. I greeted them at the door. Fiona's eyes raked over my outfit, simple but elegant. A soft champagne blouse tucked into high-waisted slacks. No labels. Just grace. "You've redecorated," she said, glancing at the living room. I smiled. Some walls needed a fresh perspective. Dinner was strained. Fiona wouldn't look me in the eye. Troy kept checking his watch. Raymond, unbothered as always, told stories about his travels, our upcoming projects, and a new community initiative he was funding. And me, he mentioned me often. Not to show off, but as someone included in his vision. At one point, Fiona excused herself. I found her in the hallway, staring at an old painting. "You really married him," she said, not turning around. I did. she exhaled. And now you're my stepmother. I gave a light laugh. Technically, yes. She turned, eyes sharp. You think you've won? No, I said calmly. I think I've survived. Her face hardened, but her silence told me she heard it. Thanksgiving came, and they came too. Not out of warmth, but out of curiosity. Maybe guilt. The table was long, but the energy was tighter than a violin string. I sat at the head, yes, my seat, carving the turkey while Fiona poured wine with a hand too tense for grace. When I asked Troy to pass the rolls, he hesitated. Then I did it, without speaking. And then, without even realizing it, Fiona spoke. Mom, can you? She stopped herself, hand hovering in midair. Her eyes went wide, like she'd said something vile by accident. The room went still. Raymond looked up, amused. Troy stared at her, and I just smiled. I'll get it, I said softly, rising to fetch the extra napkins. Fiona didn't speak for the rest of the night. Later, as Raymond and I cleaned up together, he said, Did you notice what that they didn't leave early this time? And he was right. They stayed, awkwardly, begrudgingly, but they stayed. It wasn't accepted. Not yet. But it wasn't war anymore either. It was the beginning of a shift they didn't have words for, and I didn't need their approval, because I hadn't built this life to prove them wrong. I built it to finally be right with myself. It's funny how quickly people recalibrate when power changes hands. A year after the wedding, Raymond added me as co-chair on the board of his family foundation. Some of the members blinked too hard when I walked into that first meeting, like their brains couldn't quite align the woman who once carried hors d'oeuvres with the one now approving six-figure grants. But I didn't need to justify my seat. I knew the work. I did the work. While Fiona posted skincare selfies and Troy ran through trust fund ventures that crashed faster than he could spell diversify, I poured myself into building something real. The foundation funded women's education, housing for single mothers, and scholarships for underrepresented students. I'd been all of those things overlooked, underpaid, underestimated. And now, I had the chance to reach back and pull others forward. And still, the whispers came. She married him for the money. Does she even love him? She was the maid, for God's sake. I'd hear them at galas, whispered into wine glasses behind manicured hands. But I stopped flinching, because people like that couldn't imagine love that wasn't transactional, couldn't imagine resilience that didn't require their permission. One afternoon, I bumped into Fiona again, this time at a boutique downtown. She was arguing with a salesgirl about a return policy. When she noticed me, her mouth curled into a brittle smile. I hear the foundation's doing well, she said, fingering a pearl earring she probably couldn't afford without her mother's help. We just funded a new learning center in the Bronx, I replied. I'd love for you to visit sometime. Her eyes narrowed. Are you enjoying pretending to be one of us? I didn't blink. No, I'm enjoying proving that I never needed to be. There it was again, that pause, that beat of stunned silence from a woman who had built her self-worth on the scaffolding of status. We parted with stiff nods. But it wasn't her judgment that stayed with me. It was the look behind it. Fear. Because deep down, she knew I hadn't just taken a seat at the table, I'd built a new one. And people were choosing mine. Troy, on the other hand, avoided me altogether, which suited me just fine. But occasionally, I'd see him at events, lingering at the edge of the crowd, eyes flicking between me and Raymond like he was trying to solve a puzzle he never studied for. Once, he approached. Is he happy? He asked quietly. I tilted my head. What do you think? He hesitated. He smiles more. Then, there's your answer. He nodded. You were right. You know, about Fiona. I didn't have to be. I said, she told the truth herself. To my surprise, he laughed. Not cruelly, just tiredly. I always thought you were beneath us, he admitted. And now, I asked, now I'm wondering if I ever deserved to stand next to you at all. He walked away before I could respond. Maybe that was the closest I'd ever get to an apology. One evening, Raymond and I hosted a benefit at the estate, the same one where I'd once carried trays while Fiona toasted her status. I stood under those chandeliers again, but this time as host, dressed in midnight velvet, smiling, not because I had to, but because I'd earned every second of this life. An elderly guest clinked her glass and whispered, "My dear, I've never seen Raymond this alive." I looked across the room at my husband, laughing with a young artist we just sponsored. "He makes it easy," I said. Later, as the evening wind danced through the garden, Raymond took my hand. "You do know," he said softly. "You've rewritten everything. Only the parts that needed editing." I replied. He smiled. "And what do you want next?" I didn't answer right away. Because the truth was, I already had it. Not the money, not the mansion, not even the new last name etched onto all those place cards, but peace, stability, and a seat no one could take from me. Still, I leaned in and whispered, "Let's build a school next. Maybe name it after someone the world never thought would matter." He kissed my temple. "Let's." And just like that, the girl who once vacuumed cake crumbs off ballroom carpets was designing a legacy, not in spite of where I started, but because of it. The thing about rising is that you don't always notice it until you look down and see how far you've climbed. It was a rainy Tuesday when the final echo of old life came knocking. I was in the study, flipping through early design plans for the school we were funding, Hollowell Academy, with a second line in small print beneath it. In honor of those who were once overlooked. Sophie, ever composed, knocked once and peeked in. "There's someone here. Says it's urgent." I expected a board member. Maybe a donor. It was Fiona, standing in the foyer like a memory I'd tried to forget. Her makeup was understated this time, hair in a low bun, no designer bag swinging from her arm, just a damp trench coat and tired eyes. I met her gaze. "You're far from downtown." She gave a tight nod. "I didn't come to fight." "Good," I said, "because I don't do that anymore." She looked around, taking in the paintings, the quiet luxury, the life built without her permission. "This used to be mine, you know," she said, voice brittle. "No," I replied gently. "You borrowed it." She closed her eyes. "I came because I found out I'm pregnant, and I don't know who else to talk to." The silence between us stretched thin. "Not Troy's?" I asked carefully. She shook her head. "That's a lot." She nodded. And just like that, the air between us shifted again. I no longer saw the girl who once snapped her fingers at me across linen-covered tables. I saw a woman who had been raised to wear beauty like armor and wield status like a shield, only to find herself stripped of both when life demanded more than surface. "I don't expect anything," she whispered. "I just didn't know where else to go." I offered her tea, sat with her on the same velvet couch she once dismissed as old money chic. She told me everything. And for once, she didn't pretend to be strong. When she left, she paused at the door. "You're good at this," she said. "At what?" "Being solid." "Being safe." I gave a small smile. "That comes from building your foundation with what they tried to bury you in." She blinked fast, then nodded, and left. I didn't tell Raymond until later. He only sighed and said, "That girl's been chasing love with a broken compass. Maybe now she's found north." Weeks passed. And then, one Saturday afternoon, during a quiet lunch on the terrace, Troy arrived unannounced. He wasn't alone. He brought Fiona, and beside her, wrapped in a pale yellow blanket, was a newborn. Fiona didn't say a word. She walked over, hands slightly trembling, and held out the baby. "Would you like to hold her?" "Mo," she caught herself, eyes wide. I raised my brows. "You were about to say Mom." She looked embarrassed. "Habit. Sorry." But I smiled and reached out anyway. The baby nestled against me without a fuss, her tiny fist curling near my collarbone like she'd done this before in some other life. I rocked her gently and looked up. "She's beautiful," I said. Fiona sat down beside me. "She cries all night. They all do." We sat like that for a while. No walls, no games. Just two women connected by strange fate and deeper grace. Later, as Raymond joined us, placing lemonade glasses on the table, I glanced across at them, Fiona bouncing the baby, Troy pretending not to watch, the lines of old stories softening around the edges. And I realized something. I didn't want to be the queen of revenge anymore. I wanted to be the woman who broke the cycle, who took every insult and used it to build a room where even those who hurt me could find a second chance if they asked for it the right way. So now, as we fold up this story and let the last pages settle, take a deep breath with me. Let it all go, the judgments, the gossip, the laughter that wasn't kind, and the rooms you were told you'd never belong in. Let it fade out like the last notes of a lullaby humming through soft candlelight. Because what this story really carried wasn't just betrayal or redemption. It was evolution. It was the quiet truth that your beginning doesn't define your becoming, that the girl scrubbing floors can grow into a woman who holds empires together, that love can come when you stop chasing it and start becoming it. And yes, sometimes justice comes not in loud declarations, but in soft victories, in being called mom by mistake, and realizing maybe it's not such a mistake after all. So wherever you are, whether you're still in the kitchen with a tray or sitting at the head of your own table, know this. You are seen, you are worthy, and your story is not over. Close your eyes now. Let the quiet settle. Let your heart breathe. You're safe here. You've arrived.